Welcome to the Osmium Update, your weekly data and infrastructure update from the Osmium Data Group. Brought to you by Max Mortillaro and Arian Timmerman.
So Max, hello and welcome to number 7 of the Osmium Update. So last week we were talking about your online visit to the AI infrastructure field day. We're a week beyond that now. Let's talk. What visions have you seen coming by this week? What news have you seen? And let's just discuss on what we've seen this week.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, it's been a week since we last covered this topic. We already have an article which is out on Nutanix Enterprise AI. So check it out on osmiumdatagroup.com/media. You need to scroll down to see that. Otherwise, check it out on our LinkedIn page. We have a couple more things coming on the topic of AI. There's going to be an article on Phison technology and one on Solidigm as well. I'm kind of looking at what's happening there, and it's really interesting to see what's happening in terms of storage, how storage is supporting those AI workloads. The way data is being addressed, read also the how would I put that, the different characteristics of workloads. I know that we're all focused onto what AI is delivering or is promising to deliver, but we're not always looking at what is happening on the infrastructure side. So it's really interesting to see what those vendors are preparing. I think it will be too much of an extended discussion to start talking about that right now, but be on the lookout because we're going to create a couple of articles to cover what's going on in that space. And the other thing which is interesting, we're following, Arjan, what is going on in the EMEA market around AI, especially with the new AI Act, the European Union AI Act. Interestingly enough, we were discussing before that there is a new lawsuit which is coming against Meta by the No YB, none of your business, non-profit, activist non-profit foundation, I think from Max Schrems. Schrems, the name should be familiar to people which are interested in GDPR and stuff like that, because, or rather stuff like that as in data privacy laws, because what's happening is that Meta is still using personal data from European subjects to train its AI, which is according to the No YB Foundation in violation with GDPR. So they sent a cease and desist letter to Meta, and we're probably going to follow what's going to happen in that space, right? So again, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there. Any specific thoughts on that?
Really interesting to learn more about what is going on, what will happen in this lawsuit, because I think it's probably not only Meta that is misusing the data of EU citizens. So there will be probably once a sentence will come, there will be more lawsuits that will happen after that. So it's interesting. It's also interesting to know what's going on in that space, in the AI space, how data is being used, and what that means for your data once you put it into generative AI tools. Who has rights, who doesn't have rights, what can they do with your data? All that kind of stuff is really interesting, and we will definitely look further into that. So like you already mentioned, the AI Act is effective now for a little over a year right now, right? About a year, I think. And there's still new tools coming up, and there's more to come in the next couple of years as well, on top of what is already in the AI Act. So it's interesting to see what's going on with GDPR and all that kind of stuff, what's EU regulation and what is AI, and how the EU will leverage the AI Act, but also make sure that we're not going to fall behind on other countries, other big countries that are maybe much further than us with AI. But yeah, it's good there's an AI Act, I think. But yeah, we don't want to fall too far behind, I guess.
Absolutely, absolutely, and of course, all of these regulations are kind of overlapping because, of course, the AI Act is dictating where you can use AI. What kind of categories of AI you use. From an acceptable risk, high risk AI, limited risk, and minimal risk. So those categories are going to impact where AI is deployed for which use cases. There are going to be very hefty penalties for companies which are violating those laws. Obviously, by the time they're going to be eventually found and charged, it's going to be too late. The damage will be done as usual. But it's interesting to see that. The other thing which is interesting there as well, of course, is as you mentioned before, right? The implication from a GDPR perspective and so on. And as you were talking, I was just thinking about the fact that I'm using, for example, ChatGPT very, very extensively, and for a lot of aspects of my life, which are even personal, organizational, and so on. And of course, it's kind of the paradox of me, for example, trying to work a lot on aspects such as data privacy and data sovereignty. So trying to offboard from public cloud services that I'm using personally, trying to build more and more systems which are in-house and open source, but at the same time, I'm using these AI there while I could be very well running Llama, for example, locally on my MacBook or something like that. So there's always this paradox and there's always this trade-off of how much you're willing to give versus what you're getting. At the same time, it doesn't disenfranchise these organizations to comply with EU laws. So I think that it's really important. But I think that's a bit enough about regulations and so on. So is there anything else that caught your attention this week, Arjan?
There's a lot going on in the IT market. A lot has to do with AI. A lot has to do with virtualization. A lot has to do with app modernization. I would call it more like that. So we talked about Nutanix. I've seen coming by that Nutanix is going to work together with Canonical on building better Kubernetes environments from a Nutanix standpoint, but also from a Canonical standpoint, of course. Another one is the virtualization realm. There's so much going on there that it's almost impossible to get everything in. VMware seems to be going berserk. There's VMware, there's Nutanix, there's HPE I saw coming by with Morpheus. Too much to name, and it's all virtualization, and everybody's saying we're going to move away from virtualization, but it kind of feels like we are just at the start of the 25 years that people saying we are going away from mainframe, and we're still using mainframe. IBM has still a very large business in mainframe. So what's your view on that?
So it's very, very true. Yeah, there is this kind of reconfiguration of the market, which is driven by, of course, the Broadcom acquisition. It's just crazy because it looks like we cannot escape this topic in any session that we're having together. Despite doing our best to avoid it, we're here again talking about it. So we can park aside the topic of the cease and desist letters, which are being sent to Broadcom to its customers, which do not have support anymore. There's a bunch of coverage for that already. What I think is interesting is to note what you mentioned in the virtualization and cloud native space, or container space. First of all, what you mentioned before, Nutanix is looking really to seize the opportunity of people escaping or running away from VMware as fast as they can, and some people may argue that VCF is the best thing on earth. The reality is that people are really afraid that the second Oracle is showing up, So Nutanix is looking at capturing that, and one of the reasons why one of the things they're trying to do now is there is a partnership they announced with Pure Storage. The solution should be available, you said, I think around beginning of June or maybe beginning of Q2, and apparently it's a Nutanix AHV running on top of FlashArray. I've seen a diagram. I have questions because it's interesting. I can see why it's an opportunity to run a fully supported hypervisor, which is relatively lightweight. You maybe don't have to go all in into Red Hat and learn a bunch of skills. At the same time, it's not Proxmox. It has some kind of enterprise support from Nutanix. So I can see why this can be interesting. Technically speaking, there might be more efficient ways to use a virtualization layer on top of a flash array. But again, it's all about options. And the second thing, which is really interesting, is what you said before, also about Nutanix and Canonical partnering together. Incidentally, I was working recently on an evaluation. I think we talked about that together on Kubernetes platforms. And what is interesting there is that Nutanix has done a lot of interesting stuff with NKP, but also I think that when you're working with Kubernetes in containers, especially if you want to get some kind of support, you want to go with a commercially supported distribution eventually. And if you look at what's on the market, you have OpenShift Cloud Container Platform, you have SUSE Rancher. There are a few other things there which are not really fully supported. And those are the main two which are really interesting, with a kind of a more or less developed set of features, where I would say that maybe OCP is kind of the Rolls Royce and a Rancher is more of an Audi or something like that. If I was to put it in cars terms, it's not that bad, but kind of it's missing some kind of features there. And Canonical seems to be pretty much bare bones, right? It's supported, there's a stack, but it's lacking all of the other stuff. And Nutanix has built all of these other features around that, so I can see how the two can integrate together. But I will have to stop here because we're getting slightly over time. And that might be also a great topic for an eventually upcoming podcast or article. So, Arjan, back at you.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree on that. Let's end it here. We'll be back next week with number 8 of the Osmium update. If you have any questions, if you want us discussing a topic, please let us know in the comments, and we'll definitely get back to you. Thank you.
Please feel free to follow us for more insights. You can find us on Blue Sky at Osmium Data Group and on LinkedIn also via Osmium Data Group. Thank you, and see you next week for another Osmium update.